Would you please warmly welcome my friend, my co-worker, who teaches the world, those that speak Chinese about Jesus every day to millions of folks. Would you please warmly welcome Edward Short?
Thank you, Andy, and good evening, everybody. Are you happy? Yes. Are your tummies happy? Yes. We welcome you tonight, and on behalf of the staff of World Christian Broadcasting and our listeners around the world and our website visitors, we thank you for deciding to spend your evening with us. I believe I'm standing over a trap door that will swallow me whole after about 10 minutes if I go overtime. So I'm going to talk fast and you listen fast. A few years ago, I received a letter from a young lady in Northeast China who had been listening to our Chinese broadcasts. She was a graduate school graduate. Her mother had recently died of cancer. Her heart was empty, and she needed an ear. She listened to our Chinese broadcasts. She wrote us. She and I corresponded for a long time. After about 3 years, she became a Christian. We still correspond. And last year, upon the retirement of one of our staff members, she wrote, "You serve so that people like me can listen to encouraging messages from God's Word. You'll never know how much that Word has changed my life." Our staff prays, "Lord, please send this radio signal to wherever in the world there are people whose lives can change." In the first meeting of senior producers after he became president, Andy Baker asked us, "How do each of you, in your own language service, how do you get listeners to Acts chapter 2? In other words, he's saying, even as you talk about subjects as diverse as health, home, happiness, history, hypertension, and humor, you must tell people about the love of God and about the sacrifice of Jesus Christ and about his crucifixion and his resurrection. You must tell them how to respond to him in faith and obedience and how to live a faithful Christian life." Most people in our audience don't go to church. Most are not Christians. Many of them have never heard of Jesus Christ. So we try to give our listeners a combination of the information that they want, along with the good news that we want them to learn. For example, after a major earthquake in China, Edward Ho told our listeners that he told them how to keep from contracting cholera and other such diseases. He also told them that God knew about the earthquake, that God was aware of their suffering, and that God loved them. Regarding programming, Rob Scobie says that the audience must find our subjects interesting. Yes, please. For example, Nashville may not be too important to an international audience, but what happens in country music is the fact that Tim McGraw collapsed during a show in Dublin, or that Miranda Lambert won the Female Vocalist of the Year award, again, is quite interesting to many in our audience. Whether Paul wrote Philippians before Colossians or after Colossians might be an entertaining subject for your Sunday school class, but it's not for our listeners. However, why Paul was in prison when he wrote those epistles, and how in the world he could tell people to rejoice under those circumstances, our listeners find that fascinating. One cannot bore people into accepting Christ, Rob said. Therefore, we must grab their attention and hold it by being interesting and relevant. Doug Poling is retired from CBS News in New York. Now he writes for us today's news and the good news, using current events to help explain the gospel. For example, he told about a man in Kansas who put himself in harm's way to save the lives of some Indian immigrants. From that, then, he introduced Jesus Christ, who put himself in harm's way to save all humanity. Paul Ladd is our interviewer par excellence. His interviews not only give added status to our English programs, but they also add variety that we could not easily get otherwise. In the last few months, he has interviewed Jim Caviezel. Maybe you saw the movie, Paul the Apostle. He plays Luke. You saw the movie, Mel Gibson's movie about the Passion of Christ. He played Christ. He's been on our radio station. Paul has interviewed Tony Dungy, the famous former coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He's interviewed John Bolton, our national security advisor, and other famous people. Our language services include 3 areas of programming: biblical, semi-biblical, and secular. So, a secular song may be followed by Christian evidences, and then a segment on parenting or marriage, and then maybe by Bible drama or a parable or prayer. Listeners to Dr. Konstantin Chernyshenko's Russian broadcasts, not worship broadcasts, but Russian broadcasts, they write and actually thank the Russian writers, the staff, for using this kind of a variety of information to show how Christianity influences all of life. They actually like the parables quite well too, because they use simple words to express deep thoughts. About 2 years ago, when we began broadcasting from Madagascar, I was most excited about what should have been the Chinese broadcast, but it wasn't. I was most excited about the Arabic broadcast, because the message of Jesus is the only true and lasting answer to problems in the Middle East. Our Dr. Tony Tadros grew up in Cairo, Egypt. He knows firsthand the problems and the challenges that people face daily in the Middle East. For example, divorce rates are climbing, as is drug addiction. And therefore, our Arabic programming includes segments about morality based on the Bible. Tony says, God created humankind. Therefore, his rules for life are all good. We mentioned Edward Ho a moment ago. Andy did. Edward Ho's intimate relationships in the Chinese church in Nashville give him a window through which he can see the current Chinese home, mindset, and challenges. He visits, teaches, prays with, counsels, and baptizes them. In fact, we have 2 tables of our Chinese friends here here tonight, and we are grateful for their presence. So Edward knows their spiritual needs, and then he comes to World Christian Broadcasting and writes material that answer those needs. Our brother Edit Udofia speaks the gospel far and wide, wherever he goes, whether in his native Nigeria or in his adopted Murfreesboro, where he has baptized several hundred people. Rex Morgan, our senior producer for Spanish programming, and Rex is unable to be here tonight, but Rex has trained Christians in Cuba and other places to write quality Spanish programming. 3 questions. Number 1, is our signal heard? A listener in Shanghai wrote me just this month. He said, I can hear your KNLS signal clearly with my pull-out antenna. A man in the United Kingdom wrote me and said, I can hear your broadcast from Madagascar, the broadcast to Europe, with my pull-out antenna, even when it's not fully extended. Those letters really excite me. Question 2, are we credible with our listeners? If I may go back in history a bit, after the catastrophic nuclear accident at Chernobyl in 1986, we received a letter from Russia. Now you remember, during the Soviet era, they were not able to write us. Letters had to be smuggled out of the country and then mailed to us. Someone wrote and said that they had heard over the grapevine that there had been an accident or a radiation leak or some kind of disaster at Chernobyl, but we didn't know whether to believe it or not until we heard it on KNLS. We know you will not lie to us, he said. Question 3, are we doing any good? This, of course, is the most important. First, we are a seed-sowing ministry. God promises that his word will not return void. Second, we know of people who have become Christians. We know of people who have become Christians because they listened to KNLS. Third, we deeply believe that the programs on KNLS influence multitudes of people for good and for God. Fourth, there are some tangible statistics. Our Spanish broadcasts have enrolled more than 2,000 people in World Bible School's Spanish Bible Correspondence course since September. Constantine reports that over 1,500 people study a Russian Bible correspondence course from our office in St. Petersburg, Russia. We get about 13,000 hits a day on our websites. A day. Last year, there were over 2.5 million hits on the Spanish website and about 2 million on the Chinese website. A radio station in the Middle East likes our Arabic programming so much that they broadcast it on their station 2 hours a day, free of charge. Every day, we are in China, Russia, Europe, the Middle East, South America, Japan, Cuba, Africa, in Spanish, English, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. And God willing, in about 6 months, we will begin broadcasting in Portuguese. What was your favorite item on tonight's menu? The pork loin, maybe? the dessert. What would you have done if we had only given you one bite of that item? You'd want to sock us in the nose. You would want more of that item. That's the way we broadcast. We leave our listeners wanting more. If someone listens over time, they will hear reasons for belief in God and Jesus. They'll hear how to become a Christian, and they will hear how to live a Christian life. Statistics tell us that a normal shortwave listener will listen to any given station on his shortwave radio for about 15 minutes. The video that you will see tonight will tell you more about how we use those 15 minutes. It also explains the title of our dinner, if you wondered what that was on your front of the program. So we'll explain more of how we use those 15 minutes. I say we. Yes, we, the staff at World Christian Broadcasting. But we also includes you. And we includes God. This is your ministry, and this is God's ministry. We cannot do this without God, nor do we want to try. But neither can we do it without you. And so tonight, we thank you for your past contributions. And we invite you to continue to partner with us. We need your prayers, and we need your financial support. This is your ministry. We includes you.